Hey guys, we're back. I'm Dr. Carolyn George from Vita Integrative Medicine, and I've got Leslie Harrington, my
hey guys,
awesome health coach, and she's from Transformational Nutrition. I always mess up what her coaching background is, so I'll let her tell you a little bit about herself in a minute. I am a medical doctor that has been busily studying functional medicine for the last 7 years, but I have been in medicine for almost 30 years now. It'll be 30 years next year. So I used to do ER and urgent care, and then decided I was going to go to the light side and take care of people and help them so they didn't get to the ER and have to deal with all of their health issues. So now I'm doing something called functional medicine. And tonight we have decided that we're doing a talk on detoxing. We have a lot of experience with detoxing, and we know a lot of doctors are really not wild about that term detoxing because your body does it anyway, so why do you need to help it? But we've got a lot of information for you about why it might be useful to help your body out with what it naturally does. So first, just Leslie, tell a little bit about yourself.
So for transformational nutrition, I think the distinction, the real key differential between regular health coaching is really that we're trained in spiritual and psychological and kind of some pillars that are outside your traditional just plain nutrition and fitness aspects of health. So it's kind of the non-health and the more broad term of wellness.
Looking at the whole body, which is what we like to do in functional medicine as well. So first, a little bit about detoxification. So that's kind of a buzzword everybody talks about. It kind of gets overused, I think. But it is an important function of everybody's body. Our body naturally does that. And some of the key ways we do that, everybody in medicine thinks about the liver, which is one of the critical organs of detoxification. But we also detox...
Ways we do that, everybody...
Sorry.
She's distracting me by having it lie right underneath me here.
I don't know how to communicate back to some of the messages.
So not only does your liver detox, but your kidneys are an important organ of detoxification, your skin is an important organ, and your lungs is an important organ for detoxification. So we do it through multiple modalities in your body. The key is... Actually, there's many key points to this, but the key is you need to be doing this consistently because we are constantly inundated with toxins, both through our environment, what we're eating and drinking and breathing in, and all the pollution that we've got. But we also make toxins in our body just through the process of metabolism. So we have exotoxins and endotoxins. So the point isn't really to differentiate them, but to understand that you've got a big toxic load, and certain cities have a bigger toxic load than other places. And so knowing what you can do to facilitate what your body's already doing is key.
Yeah.
So one of the top things that you want to think about when you're considering a detox is why. Okay, what are some symptoms people would have that would make them want to go for a detoxification program? And so the most common ones are things like fatigue, that kind of nebulous brain fog, can't think, not remembering things, can't concentrate, feel kind of foggy, feeling just really weak, and constipation is another key one that we see a lot. But sometimes it's just, okay, maybe I haven't done it for a while, let me see how I feel when I do this. Okay, so that might be a reason why you might do it. And of course there's all kinds of people out there in the media publishing different ways to do it. There's a lot of marketing that goes on with detoxification. And so you have to really be careful about how you do it and what you're doing when you're doing it. So we're going to kind of talk you through the reasons why you might do it and how we think is the safest way to do a detox.
Yeah, I think part of why we chose this topic is because it is the new year. There's a lot of marketing around it. There's cleanses and detox and 3-day this and 2-day that. And I hear people a lot like, oh, I'm on a detox. I'm like, well, what does that mean?
Right. And
they don't really know. It's oftentimes there's a lot of just like fasting, or they're doing some kind of really extreme thing where they're removing certain key nutrients from their regular diet. And that's really why we talked about the dangers. And we're going to get a little more detailed into why there are a lot of mistakes that are made when people are buying into some of these fad diets and the things that are out there. And there's an important reason that detox is critical, but then you don't want to do it wrong either. So you're almost probably better off not doing one at all if you're going to do one that's going to be more toxic to your body.
Right. So just to think about what you're exposed to in your environment, if you think about your everyday, you're putting on creams and lotions first thing in the morning, you've got soaps, there's all kinds of chemicals in that, there's parabens, phthalates, things that make things smell really nice. These are all things your body has to neutralize. Then you go out of your bathroom and you're walking and you might be exposed to cats and dogs and danders and things that might be allergens. You're exposed to dust. You're exposed to some chemicals in carpets. You're exposed to things in your couches and things that are flame retardant, or in your pajamas. So we're exposed to chemicals all day long, and we haven't even left the house yet. So those are all things your body has to detoxify. Then if you're eating fish, you've got mercury to worry about. If you're eating rice, you've got arsenic to worry about. I mean, you have all kinds of other heavy metals in our everyday life. Even on the playground, there's lead in a lot of the wood that older playgrounds are made from. So you've got a lot of different chemicals that your body is just being inundated with and deals with really well for the most part. But if your load increases, and then you add in maybe you're not eating very well, you're on a junk food binge, you're not drinking a lot of water, you get constipated, so then you're not excreting well, that's when you start to really have problems with that. And so these are the kinds of things you want to think about when you're considering a detox.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's important, I think, to distinguish, because some people, the things that were considered 20, 40 years ago by our parents and our grandparents, they weren't living in the same society that we're living in. So we're in a place now where we have to be more careful, and it's unfortunate because we're so, what to eat, how to eat, what are we supposed to be doing, and this and that. And it's something that not only are we having to face, but it's going to be something that you're going to want to know for your children and the people in the next generation that are.
Right.
So.
Exactly. So one of the first things that we wanted to talk about was some people, when they're doing a detox, will starve themselves. They'll really kind of limit the food that they're eating. And that's really important not to do. When you're detoxifying, you really need to eat a good, healthy diet. So first off, you want to eat food that's organic as much as possible, because the non-organic food, and even to a small degree or lesser degree, the organic food will have herbicides, pesticides, other kinds of chemicals on it. The organic presumably has less, probably has less, but it still might have some, because those fields can be side by side. So you want to try to eat organic, still wash it so you can make sure that you're getting most of those chemicals off, but lots of fruits and vegetables. Really, really push those fruits and vegetables. Good lean meats, ideally from grass-fed, antibiotic-free animals, and so that the food that you're eating has less chemicals on it. So again, you're trying to bring in less. That's the first rule of a detox, is try to bring in less of the...
Take away the exposure.
Yeah, take away the exposure to the toxins so that your liver has less work to do. Then, when you're eating all those good fruits and veggies, those are critical to really doing that detoxification process. And I don't want to get too complicated with you, but there's what we call phase 1 and phase 2 of detoxification in the liver. And in the first phase, we really need a lot of the different vitamins, because you're oxidizing, reducing, and doing some other chemical reactions, which create actually more dangerous chemicals. They're more free radicals. So in the process of making things go through that detoxification process, you actually make them worse. So then you need to make sure you've got plenty of vegetables and other nutrients on board, amino acids, which are really, really critical, sulfur, acetyl groups, methionine. So you need these types of groups, because they become little hats that go on these little byproducts that we've created to make them less toxic, and so we can get them out of the body. So essentially you're taking a toxin, which for the most part is what we call fat soluble, which means it can go into our fat. We're trying to make it water soluble so you can pee, poop, and sweat it out. So the process is fat-soluble toxin, okay? Then your body takes it, makes it a little bit more toxic, but then it pretty rapidly puts these little hats on to make it water-soluble, and then you can get rid of it.
So, and I think it's important to note that, like what Dr. George is talking about is it's solid food. Like you can be eating food. Detox doesn't mean you have to be on pure liquids. It doesn't mean that you have to be doing shakes only. There's different variations of detox, and we'll go into maybe a couple of the elimination and some of the kind of lower level, and then work our way up. But it's really critical to note, like a lot of people who have where they're holding on to weight, and she said some of the symptoms with it's weight gain, they can't lose weight, their brain fog, the fatigue, and all of these things, and your body actually is doing that to protect you. It's, your body is holding on to these toxins to keep it from being in your bloodstream with all of that exposure and going in places it's not supposed to go. So believe it or not, it's strategic by your body.
So if it can, it would get rid of it, but it's not water soluble, so it's not easy to get rid of it. So it wants to sequester it out of the blood flow. So where is it going to send it? Nerves and fat, because those are fat-soluble areas. So those are things that can absorb things that are what we consider fat-soluble. So what we need to do is help your body in that first rush get rid of as much as possible so that you're not sequestering it out there. And like Leslie's saying, that's really key to eat. Now, somebody was asking about doing a 24-hour fast during a detox. And so I would absolutely say do not do that during the detox. There are times to fast, and intermittent fasting is a really cool thing that they're doing a lot of research on. So there's a time and a place for that, but not when you're trying to detox.
Yeah, I think it's important to distinguish the goal. When the goal is detox, and you stick with kind of that. The fasting is, I think, very beneficial for some specifically brain conditions and some other types of disease states in different settings.
Yeah, exactly. So let's see, what was the next question? So that was one of the first mistake, nutrient deprivation. So don't deprive yourself of nutrients.
Yeah, can we talk a little bit about like juice cleanses? They're very popular, right? So what would be, we talked a little bit about the purpose of being able to put in some of those nutrients to help escort out and stuff. One of the primary hitches with juice cleanses is that people think, oh, I'm getting all these nutrients and all these vitamins, and exactly what we were just talking about is part of the problem. The other part is the juices are full of sugar when you're dealing with primarily fruit cleanses. So you really want to integrate green. So juicing can be really super beneficial, but you want to kind of have it a little bit heavier weight with the greens versus the
right. And you want to make sure you're getting an adequate amount of protein, which is really important for a good detox, good clean proteins.
Yeah.
And some of the other benefits of juicing is that you can mix a lot of greens in. Maybe you're somebody that hates to eat vegetables. And so then that way you can mix in some vegetables with some fruit, makes it a little sweeter, so you'll get that. So that's a big benefit of that. But it comes with some downsides. So you're getting a lot of sugar, so you got to be careful how many fruits you have per how many vegetables. It's not 4 fruits and 1 vegetable, right? You want to try to make the vegetables the bigger balance. And then it does, unless you've got a Vitamix or something where it keeps the fiber in, it's extracting the fiber. And you really want to have that fiber in your gut, not in the trash can, because that fiber is food to the bacteria in your gut. And we really want to harness the work that they do. We want to really encourage them to do that work by feeding them all those good fibers. So keep the fiber in as much as you can. Make sure that you're having a balance of more vegetables than fruits. And just watch if you're doing too much of the juicing, you can start to get a diarrhea, which is not the goal of this. We want a good healthy gut and good healthy bowel movements.
Yeah, and I think to note some signs. So if you're getting breakouts, if you're feeling nauseous, if you're feeling like the Herxheimer reaction, so like some flu-like symptoms, that's not normal. Like that shouldn't happen
you don't want
during
right.
a detox or cleanse.
This is not when you should be feeling worse. You should be feeling better. Yeah. Unless, of course, there is one time when you often will feel worse, and that's if you've decided to give up your caffeine abruptly at the same time. And then it's very common to have the headache and the kind of general malaise. So I usually suggest people kind of taper down their caffeine intake for a few days before they do a detox so that they're not kind of hitting a wall with that caffeine.
So a lot of people ask me about caffeine and the importance of caffeine when it comes to a detox, because I think when you're thinking in your mind, you're thinking, oh, sugar, but what's caffeine? And so how important and when does that become a more critical factor or something that's going to be a bigger needle mover?
Right. So in general, when I'm encouraging somebody to do a detox or talking to them about a detox, I'm trying to get rid of the things, the triggers. So we talked about kind of removing pesticides, herbicides, foods that really don't serve us very, very well. And then trying to get rid of things that can be more difficult for our body to manage. So caffeine, alcohol, and of course sugar. So caffeine is one of the things I encourage people to go off of when they're doing a detox, and that's even tea, chocolate, any kind of caffeine. So you can see, the goal is to really see what's my body doing when I feed it really healthy food, and we're going to talk some more about sleep and other things that we include in a detox. So what's my body doing when I really give it some good nutrition and take away a lot of the garbage that I've been feeding it for the last little while. And caffeine really is generally not beneficial to the body because it's kind of like whipping it. You can have the odd cup of coffee and that can be good for you, and actually there's some studies that show that it might increase longevity in people that are fast metabolizers of caffeine but not in slow metabolizers. So caffeine can be a part of a healthy day, but when you're detoxing you want to try to remove that is my encouragement.
Okay. And then so we talked a little bit about the pros and cons. The second mistake people make is detoxing quickly. So again, going with the fad diets and in 3 days you're going to be clean, and we emphasize repeatedly that it didn't take overnight or 3 days to get into the position where your body is so overtaxed and overloaded with this burden. So it does take some time to, kind of help move things through, and you need to be patient with that and really commit to the certain amount of time. So in the regular elimination. Right. So you talked about the caffeine and how else would you suggest from just a purely elimination standpoint if they weren't necessarily investing in a detox program? Right. What could they do at home?
So I have them, as I said, take out their caffeine, take out their alcohol, take out, try to make it a lower sugar type of diet. So those are pretty easy. And then I will usually ask them to cut out certain foods that tend to be what we call inflammatory, so like dairy and gluten or wheat containing products, because those are kind of big needle movers in terms of feeling better when you remove those and you clean up your diet and you've got mostly proteins and then your vegetables with some fruits and a small amount of carbs, but not a lot of the gluten containing carbs, because a lot of people have noticed that they're either gluten sensitive or they just feel better when they're not eating such a carb heavy diet. Yeah. So it's not necessarily always the gluten, it's just that it's so carb heavy. Yeah. So those are some key things that are really important with the food to try to get rid of. And of course, we're also talking, you're staying away from cheeseburgers and pizzas, and all that, the food, the Doritos, all the food that we know isn't going to serve us. So that's obviously, you can't do a detox eating junk food.
Yeah, doesn't have seems obvious, but we would be surprised, right?
Right, exactly. Now, other things, when I'm talking to somebody about doing a detox, I like to look at the whole picture. So it's not just your food, but it's the whole body. So are you getting plenty of sleep? Your body needs sleep to heal. And so we often tend to go on 5, 6, 7 hours of sleep at night, and we know through studies that we really do much better with 7, 8, or 9 hours of sleep a night for most people. So trying to get adequate sleep, drinking plenty of water, super important to kind of give your body lots of water to cleanse itself.
And quality water, not to interrupt, but I think some people, like, our water's inundated with toxins as well. Right. So really focusing on making sure you're drinking quality water and you have a filter. Right. We could go a whole show on that.
And people wonder about water and like, why do we worry about the things if the water system says that it's fine? But we know that when they're saying it's fine, it's got a certain number of parts per million or parts per billion of different chemicals. It could be antibiotics, different medicines, hormones, that type of thing. But when we think about how many parts per million or parts per billion a lot of the chemicals in our body are, they're at about the same level. So sometimes we can have unintended effects from chronic exposure to hormones and chemicals in our water supply if we're just drinking it from the tap. So I always encourage people to filter it and to not get it out of plastic containers, because we've got the BPA to worry about here in the States. If you're in Canada or elsewhere, they've already recognized the danger because it's a hormone and endocrine disruptor. And so we want to stay away from plastic as much as you can. And we don't even know, they've replaced the BPA in some areas with other plastics, but they're also not studied. So they just are assumed to be okay because nobody's found a direct link with them to any health issues. So there's a lot of this assuming, but we know what assumptions can do.
Yes, yes. And to go with the note on the water, the municipal water supply, our filter system's designed to kill bacteria. So it's not necessarily going to accommodate and compensate for some of the drugs and the different things that are found in our water system.
Yeah.
So,
and they do tests for them, but they've got legal limits that they allow, but we don't have a lot of studies to show why they've chosen those legal limits, and another lower limit might be safer.
Yeah.
Yeah, so...
And then you think about it too. You're like, do you want to have a little bit, or do you want to have none? Right?
If I'm having hormones, I want to know which hormones I'm having.
And did you know that Brita is owned by Clorox?
I know, I did not. So there you go.
Yeah, there's all kinds of cool ownership things that I've been finding with different companies.
Yeah, Which doesn't mean that. I mean, I think that they can serve a purpose.
Yes.
Yeah. So it's still cleansing a little bit.
Yes.
But anyways, so we can talk. We can talk for hours on water. Okay, we're really boring people. So lots of water, lots of sleep, and then look at your environment. Clean out, declutter closets, declutter your desk, and declutter toxic people out of your world. So if you got somebody that's really is very toxic and always makes you feel awful when you're around them, take them out for at least a few days. Right? Maybe they're family and you can't completely cut them out, but decrease your exposure to them, because you're really trying to do what your body needs to feel better and to feel like your best version of you.
Yeah, I think that actually is number 3. And the biggest mistake is not detoxing holistically and looking at not just kind of taking the exposure of your body from the toxins and chemicals and things like that, but recognizing that there's a lot of energy that we spend and exert that your body could be using to do healing things in your given day. When you're taking away from the digestive process and kind of freeing up that energy, you want to be able to restore your organs and kind of give the liver a break and do things like that. And these external factors are still impacting that. And even like social media, I like to suggest that people, like my social media feed is exactly what I want to see. It's happy, it's relatives. Some detox might include not watching the news. Not watching the news did a huge amount for my life years ago, and now I probably should watch it a little more because I don't never know what's going on.
Right.
But it's a matter of kind of recognizing what type of things you're letting into your field of energy, and it's finite. You can only give off so much, and your body only has so much to do the reparative things it needs to do.
Right.
So that was a big one for a lot of people. I think that we see that they're sick, right? They feel yucky, and they've done so many really, really good things. Like they do the work, and they know the diet, and they really do put the right things in their body, but they're not paying attention to some of this other stuff. World. And so those other really big factors, like managing stress differently or sleeping, can be critical for the overall healing process it's same consistent with detoxing.
Right. And one of the other things that's important with a detox is to make sure that you're not constipated, that you're going to the bathroom, that you're peeing a lot, so you're drinking that water, and you're getting out there and sweating. So that's another reason why you don't want to try to starve yourself during a detox, is you need to have the energy to go out there and sweat, because you're trying to kind of clean through. Your pores are a great way to detoxify your body and make yourself feel better.
And what about, so people ask a lot, they're detoxing, they'll be at the gym, I'm on a detox, and I'm like, that's another thing, like how much energy should you be exerting? Should you be maybe taking that fitness piece and making it a little more mild for that time?
Yes, you should. So you don't want to be running a marathon at that same time, but it is good to sweat. So however, but just not going full force, because again, everything in moderation, right? It's kind of that's the theme for a detox.
Balance,
right.
And I guess here in Florida it's a little easier than
just
most
sweat.
of the people around the world.
Right?
We just step outside.
Right.
But like saunas, and people ask me too sometimes of steam. Is that like or a hot tub? That's a little different, right?
A hot tub or the infrared saunas.
But the hot tubs are you're not excreting the same way, right?
Well, especially when you're all steamy, it kind of plugs your pores a little bit. So I'm not as big a fan. I think if you just get out there and exercise, that's really the most important thing. Yeah. And just sweating, getting out there.
Even
and
a rebounder, a lot of people don't realize your lymphatic system doesn't move unless you do.
Mm-hmm.
So getting up in the morning and even calisthenics and jumping jacks and doing little things like that helps kind of get things moving and shifting around in your body. So those rebounder things, they're big and bulky and whatever, but a lot of people just have those just to kind of get themselves going.
Yeah, they can be kind of fun too.
Yeah.
Jazz it up a little bit. Now, somebody had asked about, are there any studies of detoxification? And so obviously there's a lot of studies of how the liver does it, but there aren't studies that I've seen that document a clear, discrete path, because you'd have to keep people in the same room or feeding them the same diet for weeks on end and study all of these different things. So that's, without having a product to sell, there's not a lot of people that are doing that. So I don't know of any studies that have done that, but I think when you do an N of 1 and look at yourself and see how you feel, that can be your kind of individual study on whether that's good for you or not. So that's why I think it's important to always tune in to how you're feeling before and then after, and then see how that works for you.
Yeah, I think it's true to say that so many people get very used to the way that they feel, and they think it's normal. When it's not necessarily normal to have like the bloating, or maybe, I backed up a little bit. I have people that say they don't go for days, and I'm like, that's not normal. Right. And to understand that that's normal for them in their world, but it's not normal, and moving that, it's very, very toxic to have that, to be bound up like that. And so I think some things people just get used to. And then, so some people go, dairy doesn't bother me, but when they take it away for 21 days or a month, and then they reintroduce it, they're, maybe not, Right. Sometimes it takes giving your body a break before it's going to start to really respond.
Right. And then that's something you can choose. If you love dairy, you can have it. But if you know that it's going to give you the gas and the bloating and the constipation, then you might choose not to do that. So these are all ways to do little mini experiments with yourself to see what your body needs and really personalize your own health routine. Now, another question some people ask is, how often should I detox? And so some people have kind of a daily healthy life and they don't really feel like they need to detox. Other people, we've just been through the holidays, Hanukkah, Christmas, New Year's, and so after that, a lot of people typically talk about detoxing because they've, overdone it a little bit too much. So kind of figure out what works for you, but some people will do it on a quarterly basis, like with the change in seasons. Some people will do it, some religions do it, where you, every few days, you'll do a couple days with really clean, just kind of cleanse your system out. So there's all different ways of doing it, but the key thing is make sure you're drinking a lot of water, that you're eating a lot of the nutrients, especially your cruciferous veggie group. I didn't really mention a specific group of vegetables, but the cruciferous vegetable group, which is broccoli, kale, bok choy, cauliflower, cabbage. Those are really high in the sulfur-containing metabolites, and so really good to help your liver because it needs a lot of what we call N-acetylcysteine. It uses that to make glutathione, which is one of the key ways that we detoxify. And so your body, the more of those vegetables you give it, the more of those little hats it's able to put on and able to shuttle things through and make them water soluble. Another thing to consider that I neglected to mention, I think I just briefly said it, but Tylenol. That's brought through the liver, and that can be a big load on the liver. And there was recently a lot of deaths because there's Tylenol in so many of the over-the-counter products that we don't even think about it or realize it, but it causes a lot of liver problems, especially chronically.
Yeah. And
so just looking at how much of these over-the-counter medications you're taking.
Well, in the pharmaceutical world, so not just over-the-counter, the pharmaceutical world, but all the Tylenols that are found in like the mixtures of hydrocodones and things like that were actually lowered because there were some that had 500 plus, 500, 750 of the acetaminophen, and they actually, the FDA lowered it in the prescription drug. So it's not just it's being taken very seriously because it's very, very impactful. And they also changed some of those drugs to class 2 drugs from class 3.
Right.
So it's really been a big deal because of the impact it's had.
The Tylenol issue. And that kind of segues into other drugs. So any drugs you take, your Crestor, your Prilosec, everything we take, or any bioidentical hormones, that all goes through your liver and has to be manipulated in such a way to make it safe and get it out of your body. So the more drugs that you're on, the more you really want to make sure that you're helping your liver but it needs to be consistent. So, for example, if you're on Coumadin, which is a blood thinner, that gets broken down by the liver, and they'll tell you not to eat grapefruit because grapefruit can get some of the liver enzymes upregulated, so it breaks down the Coumadin too much, and so then your level goes lower and you're not adequately anticoagulated. So if you're going to have grapefruit, you need to let your doctor know, you need to have that conversation, but make sure you're having the same amount. You're having one a day, or you're having something consistent so that they can adjust your dose of medicine to account for what your liver is doing, because your liver is really critical in manipulating all of the drugs that you take. And so it's
I think
important.
anytime you're making significant health changes or changing your diet, if you're on insulin and you're eating cleaner or you've eliminated sugar, like your insulin's going to start changing in response to the way your body's metabolizing things. And I know,
well, you're eating less.
And even like insulin and the Coumadin, you know, when your sugar and your blood sugar is right, and it metabolizes different in your body. So it's it's cool. It's pretty interesting.
Yeah. Now, so we've gone over, we did the 3.
Yeah, I think the detox holistically.
Yeah, I think we've got it, guys.
Yeah, if there's any other questions, now is the time. We're opening for Q&A. We answered a couple along the way.
Let's see, anything that has pharmacological benefit has the potential for harm or side effect. Yes.
A way to open that.
Yeah, I don't know. That is very true. Everything's going to have side effects, and some of them are desired and some of them are not desired. So just always being aware, no matter what you take, whether it's over the counter, whether it's an herb, whether it's a medication that's prescribed, it all has effects, and the ones that we want are still side effects, but they're the ones that we desire, and the other ones are obviously ones we have to watch out for.
The other thing I think is a whole nother show is really nutraceuticals or vitamin and nutrients that get depleted from some of the pharmaceutical drugs that are out there. So, you know, certain statin drugs and CoQ10 and metformin and B12, there's different types of things that happen in your body when you're on a pharmaceutical drug that impact your nutrient levels. So that's something we will definitely talk about in another show and kind of get into a little more detail there. All right, we're looking to see the rest of that question, right?
Yeah, I'm trying to see the rest of the question because I can't read it, and I'm...
that is from...
Yeah, anyways,
Blair.
we can answer that we can type in an answer to that afterwards, but we're at our time limit here. It's just after 8 o'clock.
Here we go. How do we know that detox is not harmful, aside from what is intuitive? Anything that has a pharmaceutical benefit has a participant.
Right. So somebody was saying, how do you know if detox is not harmful? So...
I think that's with what you were just saying about the...
Yeah, but we're really talking about eating healthy food and exercising and sleeping, and so I think through millennia we know that these things are necessary. I don't know that we necessarily need a study to know that those things are. Now, if you're thinking about supplements that people will give you, that type of thing, for a detox, yes, you have to be careful, because sometimes even if it is what it says it is, it may have unexpected effects in an individual. So it's something that you should discuss with your primary care practitioner.
Yeah, and I think when we touched a little bit on some of those effects, like the rashes and the nausea and the things that aren't necessarily normal, because if you're doing a cleanse and it's pulling out toxins and things like that. So there's dangers there for sure. And that's part of why we want to make sure when people are doing this that they're making educated and understanding the choices behind that. But from a nutritional standpoint, I mean, the research is really just history. You know, we've been eating plants and things like that for
a long
time.
Evolution. And we definitely know that the liver needs those things. So that part's not a problem.
Yeah.
So just keep it safe, guys. Talk to your doctor, your practitioner, and make sure that you're eating your way through it, you're sweating, and you're exercising, and you're sleeping, and you're detoxing your world. And have a great time, and we'll look forward to seeing you next week. Send in some ideas if you have any for what you'd like us to talk about next week, because we're just kind of doing this on the fly. We're just coming up with suggestions that people have and talking about them.
Yeah, and questions. So if you have questions, you can add them to this feed, and we can always come back and we'll answer you in the text.
Feed, yeah, you got it. Okay.
Have a great night, guys.
Have a great night. Have a great week.
All right. Bye.